Welcome, everyone. Dr. Josh Long here with AME Podcast, my way to talk to folks who are still making music beyond the classroom. Yeah, that's right. The lifelong learning in music education. It's so exciting to me because I see so many folks who uh, actually stop playing their instrument or stop singing or stop being involved with music when they leave the schools. We are sponsored by Art and Music Emporium, serving artistic excellence. We do such things as fix instruments, music lessons, obviously, for people of all ages, and specializing in adult learners, and as well as we do some performance initiatives, two of them being the annual Community Band by the Sea, which is in Wildwood, New Jersey, that occurs at the end of July. We also do the Bethlehem Steel Company Legacy Band, which we're going to be rearing up for a third performance of that in October. Both of those bands, if you're actually interested in, you can participate. What we basically do is have a rehearsal just the day before, and then the concert's the next day. So, as I say, if you want to come to the beach, come down to Wildwood and come and enjoy and do a rehearsal with us and then do a concert right there on the beach, as well as the Bethlehem Steel Company Legacy Band, which we actually recreate history. It's really exciting. We also do other things such as Tuba Christmas. So I know that's not the time of year right now, but as they do come up, we do sponsor two of them, one in Easton, Pennsylvania and Belvedere, New Jersey. And as I said, it's all about lifelong learning. So if you are interested in playing, please check us out at www.artmusicemporium.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. We put videos just like this online so that you can hear about lifelong learning as well as our performances. We are also on Facebook, so you can give us a like there. As well as we do have a Patreon account if you are interested in giving any donations, proceeds to support us, again, helping people with lifelong learning in music education. It's all about that, as I keep saying that in word all the time. So I'm so excited about my next guest. Believe it or not, I have not met him in person. This is what the cool thing is about online, as I say, and sometimes people don't like it, but I think it's cool. I found out he watched one of podcasts of a friend of mine who did this, and funny thing is he knows him, and then I found out I know one of his good friends where I'm participating in community bands up in New York State. So it's kind of, I say this, music is a small world, and it's so awesome to, talk to folks and again, unpack what their ideas are and their stories. I know he's an avid trumpet player, and I know he's been participating in drum corps as well as community bands throughout his lifetime. So that's just some of the stuff we're going to talk about. Please welcome Harvey Cohen. How you doing, Harvey?
Very good, Josh. Thank you for the intro. One small thing, my involvement with drum corps has been as a fan, not as a participant, but I'll tell you more about that as we get into it.
That's okay. Yeah, that's actually cool. Whether or not, with this, I always say it can be participating or, involvement. It's, you're still there helping. I'll
Yeah.
be honest, I actually share this all the time. I've performed with a drum corps as far as a parade corps. And other than marching on the street, that's all I've done. I've not done any of the show corps or anything on the field like some of my colleagues are, as well as Lee as our friend. He's been on the field and doing things, so that is okay. So no
Okay.
worries about that. I
Okay.
love to hear how people are involved with music, and I remember us talking a little bit about drum corps. So hey, I thought maybe we take a little time first. I do this with most of my guests to just really talk a little bit about how you got started, with music, and not to be funny here. I know it was a while ago, so share what you want to share.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I think that's a great starting point. Um, I grew up just north of Boston in the community of Revere, Massachusetts, which actually had a very storied musical background, which I'll get to in a second. But at home, my parents really cherished music. My dad was a huge big band aficionado, loved the big bands from the 40s, from his era when he was a kid, and was playing that music a lot. And my mom, while she loved all kinds of music, was really into Broadway shows. And so on the stereo at home, there was either drum corps music or big band music or show music. And I got inundated with music and got to love it to the point where when I was in the fourth grade and they came around to demonstrate musical instruments, I came home from that one day and told my parents I wanted to play the trumpet. And I had no idea why I wanted to play the trumpet because they showed us all these other instruments, but the trumpet intrigued me.
Yeah.
And my parents were a little cautious at first. They rented the horn, and I started. And I think within the first 2 or 3 weeks, they realized I really enjoyed it. So they went from renting the horn to actually purchasing the horn for me. And my instructor from the fourth grade on in the Revere Public Schools was very encouraging, taught me lots of things about music, about the trumpet, how to perform, how to get a good sound. And I just sort of flourished from there. I mean, there was a lot of times that my parents said I had to practice, and I didn't really want to practice, but I now look back at it and said, they were right. The one thing that might have been wrong about was they wanted me to practice right after dinner, and I didn't know any better. So I ended up blowing a lot of crumbs from my dinner into the horn, which was not a good thing. But all in all, it got me into good habits. I learned to play the instrument, certainly not master it, but
Yeah.
play it. And I got so involved with the trumpet that by the time I was in the seventh grade, the high school band director in Revere asked me to join the band. And he did that with select musicians that were that young.
Wow.
Um, and from then on, playing in ensembles was my thing.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, Revere had three competitive band slash drum and bugle corps. One of the biggest ones, the best well known from that era, is the 27th Lancers. And I don't know if you've heard of them,
I have.
but they were from Revere, Massachusetts. They were organized and started by a gentleman who lived in my town. And so they always were from Revere. And at the same time, the Fleetwood recording company that recorded all the drum and bugle corps shows was also based in Revere, Massachusetts. And my dad, who owned an office supply business, did business with them. And so drum and bugle corps were inundated with me.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I was growing and I was in the band with a very good friend of mine, he was also in another drum and bugle corps, the Immaculate Conception Reveries.
Okay.
So Revere had a lot of things going on. They also had a CYO marching band that was competitive. So there
Yeah.
were four musical groups that essentially marched. The high school band marched in football games and parades.
Yeah.
And well, I had a chance to join the Lancers, and it was tempting. I I decided to stay with the high school band for the entire 6 years, from seventh grade through my senior year in high school. And I enjoyed playing. And I enjoyed being so close to a cultural center of music in Boston, where the Conservatory and Berklee School of Music were based. And there were chances to audition for All-State and other high school honors. And I didn't make it, but I got a chance to understand the audition process, sometimes a little bit of the competitive nature there, but I got to understand the culture in a much wider sense. And while I was in high school and I wanted to grow my trumpet skills, um, I enrolled and started taking lessons from John Coffey, who was a renowned trombone player with the Boston Symphony at the time.
Yeah.
And he had a studio for brass players to learn. And every Saturday at that time, I would jump on the subway in Boston, by myself on a Saturday morning, lugging a trumpet, a high school kid, lugging a trumpet into downtown Boston, up to his studio right across from the conservatory, and had some of the best trumpet lessons I have ever had. And what he taught me sort of stuck with me: how to breathe, technique, musicianship, how
Yeah.
to get a very good tone out of things. And it just helped me so much. And while I never really had an aspiration to be a musician professionally,
Hmm.
I always wanted to keep music as part of my life somehow. So from there, I went to college, and I went to engineering college in upstate New York at
Hmm.
Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, where I knew that one of my extracurriculars was going to be playing in a band.
Hmm.
And I played in the concert band and in the RPI pep band, which played at football and hockey games. And occasionally we went to basketball games as well.
Mhm.
And that's where I met some of my closest friends that you know.
Yep.
Uh, the Mulders, the Coles
Yep.
that play up in the Poughkeepsie area. They've
Yep.
been living there ever since we all graduated. But we all went to school together. We hung
Yep.
out together. Um, I have so many fond memories of playing hockey games, playing concerts, and I really got to understand the concert band genre and the library of some terrific music there. And while I went into engineering as a profession, I
Yep.
knew I always wanted to play my horn on the side. And so I've been trying to do that ever since throughout my adult life. I've also had the chance with my sister, who has also become an accomplished musician. She's a
Mm,
piano player,
cool.
to play in some show orchestras, pit orchestras
Mhm.
for community theater and so forth. And those were so much fun, so much fun. So I've had a chance to explore all these different genres of performing and learning about my instrument and learning about organizations and so forth. I got involved in community bands in my adult life, first in Connecticut with the Simsbury Community Band.
Okay.
Then when I moved to upstate New York and lived in the Rochester area, which was another oasis of musical talent, I was right in the backyard of the Eastman School of Music at the
Mhm.
University of Rochester. And I got involved with the Parenton Concert Band, very high quality community band. Um, and we had some people from all over, some music educators and other people who were really accomplished musicians. And we performed some very tough pieces, very interesting pieces.
Yeah.
There's a lot of music I got exposed to. I made, again, some good friends. One of my best friends, a trumpet player, is the librarian at Sibley Library at Eastman. Um, his name is Jim Farrington. He's another great friend, good trumpet player, and just the friendships, the music making has been so much fun, has been such a big part of my life. And now that I've moved down from Rochester to Central Florida, just south of Tampa, the same
Mhm.
community where Lee lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
been involved in two community bands, South Shore Community Band and the Eastern Hillsborough Community Band with Lee. We play together in that band.
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful thing. My wife is a clarinet player. She plays in both bands as well. So music, it's been huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, what an awesome journey. Hey, I just wanted to just point out before we kind of dig in a little bit with them. So when I was in grad school, I was in Avon, Connecticut, and I played in the Simsbury band.
Really? Oh, you talk about another small world.
Yeah, it's a small world. That's right. Yeah, I played.
I first lived in Suffield and then I moved to Weathersfield, but
Yeah,
stayed in the Simsbury band for a while.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I played that in Farmington Valley. I kind of switched back and forth with them, to perform because I was going to the Hart School, University of Hartford at that time
Hmm.
for 2 years. So it's so crazy because like, as you're sitting here and you're telling me all your stories and places you've been, it's like I don't think people really realize like how these like community bands, how these bands, exist in the area, and how many people are involved with them and where it's a tapestry of like kind of our culture,
Yeah,
because, you
you're
know,
right.
just like you were saying, I mean, I just wanted to, and I have like so many questions to ask you in, about kind of your journey, but one thing that just hit me right away was exactly when you were saying where you grew up, there was so many different drum corps and concert bands and community bands and stuff like that. And I'm
Yep.
just interested, like, and if whether or not you performed in them or were involved with them or not, but they were there. I was just interested, to if you could talk a little bit about that, because you're doing that now, even today, like where you
Yes.
are, where you're living, you're involved with a band. And I was just interested in if you could talk a little bit about how, that connection is important to you. I know music's important, you know what I mean?
Right.
And we're going to
But
talk about that in a second, but that connection's important too?
the connection's important and the connection with people of a like mind. It's a social interaction as well as an educational and personal challenge to rise to the level of performance that should be, given there. And that's, one of the things I try to do. We all strive to be our best when we're performing. Um, but you're right. In that long-winded history I just gave, I've left out things. When I was in high school and I was studying with John Coffey,
Yeah.
he mentioned that the Harvard University had a summer community band. And I was just a high school student, but it was one of the most enriching and rewarding experiences to go to Harvard University once a week to play in the big theater that they have there. I forget the name of it. And there were people from all walks of life. There were high school people, there were young adults, there were older adults. We all just mixed in and we shared parts. It wasn't a hierarchy. Let's have some fun making good concert band music like the Holst suites, which is where I got exposure to some of the more intricate music. Um, Things like Chester Overture and all of the pieces like George Washington Bridge.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the summer, the Harvard Summer Band would go out to the Esplanade in Boston, where the Boston Pops typically play on July 4th.
Yeah.
It's this
Uh-huh.
big outdoor shell right on the Charles River. And people come with blankets and lawn chairs. And we had some tremendous performances there that were really eye-opening. So that was another experience. But through it all, making friends, meeting people in other walks of professional life, but that use music as one of their core hobbies and passions that give them some level of reward and fulfillment has always sort of struck home with me. And through it all, made lifelong friends, enjoyed the experiences immensely. Um, can't say enough good things, and I've been exposed to so much good music that I really enjoy not only performing,
Yeah.
but listening to. I mean, I could turn on some of the Frederick Fennell recordings that I have of the Eastman Wind Ensemble and listen to Crown Imperial about 15 times in a row. It's such a tremendous piece of music.
Mhm.
Those are the kinds of things, as I think you can tell, that excite me. It
Yeah.
really, really get me going.
Yeah, and that being said, I mean, goodness gracious, just like I'm sitting here and all the names that you're dropping out, George Washington Bridge, I'm sitting there going, what a staple of band music, you got the experience,
Got
and
got got the same thing at RPI. We had two conductors, Henry Carr and Paul Aldi. One was a trumpet player, one was a clarinet player. They were music educators around the Tri-Cities area in upstate New York. And they brought us the same kind of music and education to our concert band at a technical school and raised our levels of musicianship and interest. Those gentlemen brought us those same kinds of music over and over again. Um, you know, Variations on a Korean folk song or the William Byrd Suite, things like that
yeah,
never had exposure to in high school. While
yeah.
I did have good exposure, just growing that repertoire and learning that music and understanding how to perform it as an ensemble were things that really stuck with me and I've enjoyed ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to just jump right into it. You keep talking about the pieces and the experience, and they stuck with you. What was what do you feel was about the music and about those experiences that you had that really, become memorable or essentially become very strong for you that, you're still, even today, you're still remembering what those are and not saying you're reliving, but you put on the recordings again, you do listen to them again, you do, you're excited when you hear those pieces again. I was just interested. Did you ever think what was in either in the music or in the experience itself that provided such a passion? I'll say it that
Yeah,
way.
and no, that's a great question, and it gets me thinking. The music itself and the way it was written has always been a little bit awe-inspiring. I can't understand how some of these composers and arrangers get their musical ideas and then notate them in a way that as a performer, we can take their notations and try to reinterpret them.
Right.
That creative spark is something that I I I don't have, I don't think in myself. I can't sit and write a piece of music out of thin air, but I admire the talent
Yeah.
and the skill and the nuance that they bring. Um, and then when you perform these pieces of music that are committed to paper and as an ensemble, you put in the dynamics, you put in the tempo changes, the key changes. They bring out something internally that's emotional. And I think that's typically the composers and arrangers' idea is to bring some emotion. I mean, some of John Williams' music is so emotional. I love the stuff that John Williams writes and that we've performed recently over no, and over the years, from the movies to the Olympic fanfares to things. Those things just reach out and wrench emotion.
Yeah.
The same thing with Broadway shows. You go into it and you say, okay, I know this show and maybe this piece of music, but when you're sitting in a pit orchestra or even sitting in the audience and watching the show and seeing how the music fits into the theme of the show and draws the audience's emotions out, that reflects back to the musicians and it does something inside you or inside me
Yeah.
that gives me that sense of joy, that sense of wonder, that sense of fulfillment that says I'm bringing joy and passion and some ethos to these people, and I'm getting the same thing back in return. It's something magical, and yet within the community band settings, it's done with a group of people that we know and live with and become friends with and share other social experiences with beyond the band. It just becomes a very enriching experience for me and my wife now, and um, all of us who participate in this and really enjoy um, doing our best to try to bring the composers and arrangers' ideas to fruition so that the audience can enjoy the same things we do. That's, I hope, answers your question. That's what gets me going.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I know. I actually I talk with a lot of folks about this all the time, and it's very hard to explain,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
just get this connection and you don't know how to explain it. But all the discussion that you just kind of, all the narrative you just said is awesome because you're getting into the sides of what the composers want, what the audience is listening to, how that connection is. And I don't think people realize how, like you said, magical music can be and
Mhm.
how it can take over. Like I always explain it when, hours of the day, my normal job, I can tell you what time it is that when I'm playing, I could not tell you what time it is because
Right,
time just stops, and I know time doesn't physically stop. We know that,
right,
but
right.
it's just, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about everything else, and it's just that expression, is just so powerful, and
It really is. It really is. I
yeah,
agree.
yeah, it's just interesting. It's awesome you having that feeling and kind of going off of that a little bit. You mentioned something about the community band side of things.
Mhm.
That your friends, you know these folks that are social with you, these people who are part of your band. You are people of the area, you are performers and you are working together. And I was just interested if you could maybe talk a little bit about that camaraderie, and that side of it where it seems to feed that also as well, the musical side of things. If you think about that, because you're all taking that journey together, right?
Right, right. I was always amazed in my early years with community bands as a young and then middle-aged professional that, my professional life has always been in engineering and technical work. And I've enjoyed that immensely. And I realized that when we come together as a community band, people are coming in from all walks of life, different perspectives, different challenges, different successes, and so forth. But yet, when, like you said, when time stops and you take your instrument out of the case, you get warmed up and tuned up, time stops, professional differences stop. There's nothing between you and your neighbor except the sheet of music and the conductor waving his baton and trying to get a sound that he knows we can produce, whether it's changing the dynamics or doing things with the music that evokes that ensemble, that togetherness. When our entrances are sharp, our cutoffs are sharp, when nobody misses a key change and the key changes happen magically and mystically, there's a transcendence almost about the performing of the music that cuts across various I guess social constructs that people have. We're all one band. And afterwards, we can talk about the music, we can talk about the local sports teams, we can talk about the local news, typically stay out of politics, that's fine with me too. But we're just talking about friends. What we might have eaten, what restaurant we might have eaten in recently that might have been pretty good, and it just is easy and it's free flowing, and there's no pretension about it. Um, it's magical, like you indicated, and it's that social setting I think is hard to achieve, possibly in other settings, although I realize that people in all walks of life pursue different things,
Yeah.
and they may be getting the same kind of fulfillment in other hobbies and pursuits that they interest them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I noticed also, both here and up in Rochester, when I mentioned to friends who are not involved in music about our performances and if they would like, maybe show up, I don't expect them to. More often than not, here in Florida, our friends willingly, wantingly come out and support us because they enjoy the music. And
Yeah.
I sometimes feel like a little bit of someone that's bringing something a little bit new to people, because people are familiar with symphony orchestras and the big things they see in performance stages and on television and other ways. But concert bands, for some reason, just don't have that notoriety.
Hmm.
And when you invite people to come out, and they do come out, and then they come to you afterwards and say, my goodness, I didn't know what a band was or how it sounded, but boy, I really enjoyed what I heard, and I'm coming out again. That again is rewarding. We're bringing some joy to other people, and that's terrific.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. I know. I feel sometimes people don't know how many are involved with it either,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
especially with a concert band, depending on how large or whatever the bands, I've seen them of all shapes and sizes, but it's when the community and a lot of the musicians come out and seeing like, wow, like all these different people are in it, or, you didn't harp on this too much, but like all people of walks of life, different
yep,
ages, different
yep,
professions, and you're all coming to do that same goal. And I always say this, it's like, where else can you see that? You know
yeah.
what I mean?
And then there's something, Josh, I think maybe from my generation, and I know you're a little bit younger than I am, and but when we grew up and specifically wind instruments,
Mhm,
band instruments, were so big in the schools. A lot of kids took them up. Some stayed with them, some didn't.
mhm,
But the ones that stayed, including myself and yourself and others, want to keep playing our horns in those kinds of settings that bring joy to other people, bring challenges to ourselves musically and
mhm.
personally. Um, so there was a cohort that I'm not sure if it shrunk or not that said, I played a wind instrument in school. I still want to play it after school. And that's exciting. I don't know if that has continued through the generations that have followed us. I do see some younger musicians in our community bands, and I'm thrilled that they're there. But there doesn't seem to be the numbers compared to the folks in my generation that are still performing on their instruments. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that dynamic, if it is shrinking, changes so that it grows again. And it's a matter of whether music education in the schools is still as important as it once was, um, whether music is being treasured by um, children and their families so that they get the love of music and continue it on as they become adults. But I'm certainly a little bit concerned that this community band thing that we all love may not stick around unless there's other people coming into it, younger people.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. I
Yeah.
just don't know.
Yeah, no, no, actually, it's something I've shared in another podcast, but I'll share this to you as well. Again, when you grew up, this wasn't happening when I grew up in my town. I'm just going to share that with you, but of what I know in research and in history. But the way you describe, your town, there seemed to be a ton of different community groups. Now, I'm
Yeah.
I'm just saying community groups being drum corps, church bands, concert bands. I'm just using that as a big umbrella, as well as, where I grew up, there used to be three very active drum corps, for example, that used to go out and compete. And there was two or three community bands that were going on at the same time, and church groups and different things. And today, not so much. There's kind of one or two here and there, and nothing against that one or two. It's just sad because it's like you said, I don't see that as much anymore either.
Mhm.
I see some decline. I'm not saying that I see all of them vanishing, but that's kind of been on my path. It's kind of funny you brought that up because I get nervous about that too, because like I said, I see them go to high school and then they drop off, you
Right,
know.
right, 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 right.
So, but I mean, as far as I know, and I can't speak too much for the public schools. I mean, I was in the public schools a bunch of years ago, but I know, the ones that are playing are very active. I mean,
Mhm.
they have the competitive marching band circuits and the pep bands and the concert bands and the jazz bands and
Right.
different things. But
And
yeah,
that's good. That's encouraging.
yeah, yeah. And my biggest thing is like, what I'm finding, and this is something that I discussed with somebody else, just to kind of throw this out there was, in the high schools, they had that camaraderie, feeling that school spirit. And then when school ends, that all ends, really, if you think
Yeah.
about it, right?
Yeah. 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 That's true.
So, you know what I mean? So then they go to the workplace and, not, I don't know, it's like you're in a different time of your life, those kind of things. But, and that's what actually I want to ask you about because for you, I know you've moved around a little bit. And I mean, I know
Mhm.
you weren't, on the road all the time, don't get me wrong, but you've been in a few different locations throughout your life. And I was just interested to see how, like, if you can remember, because it doesn't seem like you stopped performing, if you can remember, how you made a comment about how you got involved. I just got involved. Like, what did you do right away when you went to like a new area, to get involved, if you remember? Like I said, you might not remember, but you got
Oh,
involved. You know?
yeah. I mean, I do recall a few of the times to getting involved. You're
Yep.
right. I mean, I grew up in Boston, went to college in upstate New York.
Yep.
Then I essentially lived in Connecticut for about 20 years and
Okay.
then moved to Rochester and lived there for about 20. And then now I'm here in Florida, just to give you the geography. So when I moved to Connecticut, I was looking for a community band and I didn't find one. And I was working in a large industrial organization um, between the Massachusetts border and Hartford. It was in a community of Windsor, Connecticut. And the company was many thousand employees on this campus setting out in the tobacco fields there.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, there's no band. I almost tried to start a community band by using the company newsletter to see if there was any interest.
Yeah.
And while there was no interest, and I had absolutely no skills at trying to either conduct or lead a band, other than a little segue, I led the RPI pep band when I was a junior and senior, and that was a whole lot of fun when you're conducting a pep band at a
Yeah.
football game or a hockey game. But I had no concert band conducting experience, but I thought if we had enough people, maybe we'd draw it together. And while that didn't succeed, somebody in that process said, there's a community band in Simsbury. And I was living in West Suffield at the time, and I didn't know about it. And it was only
Yeah.
a few miles south of where I lived. And before you know it, I got involved and went to rehearsals and became an integral part of the band for about 5 or 6 years. At the same time, I was going to UConn in the evenings to get my master's degree down in Hartford, and the community band was wonderful. The Simsbury Community Band. We performed outdoors. Occasionally, we did some nursing home things, like you may have known, performances. But it was a fun band. Uh, the same makeup, group of good adults, and I had a lot of fun playing in it. Um, I dropped out when my first child was born because all of a sudden I'm a new father, and that certainly took precedent. And
Yeah, right.
becoming a new father and then having a second child a few years later, two kids, these very young kids. I didn't perform for a while. That was
Mhm.
one of the things I had to put on hold.
Yeah.
But when the kids got a little bit older and I had a chance to move to Rochester, New York, um, when we got settled, I was going to start looking for a community band, and I went into a music store to get some valve oil for my trumpet. And on the counter near the cash register was a CD of what turned out to be a local community band. And I asked the person at the music store, and he happened to be a member of that band
Oh, cool.
and told me all about it. And he happened to be a fellow trumpet player, gave me the contact information, and I became involved in the Parenton Concert Band, which was very close to where I lived. And they always played challenging music. It was a band that did not require auditions, but it sort of did. It said, "We'll let you play with us for a few weeks, and we'll tell you whether or not you fit in with this band." And
Hmm.
by that time, you would get a sense of if you're realistic about your own skills,
Yeah.
you'd fit in
Yeah.
because they were challenging and they expected the musicians to have, good skills, how to follow a conductor, how to read music and so forth, basic skills. So naturally, I played there for a few weeks. I was invited in, and I played there for 14 or 15 years, living in the Rochester area. And that group performed for the Association of Concert Bands, the ACB,
Yep.
uh,
Hmm.
at their annual meetings down in Corning, New York. We traveled down there. We did an exchange concert with a band in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada.
Oh, that's cool.
It was, yeah, we performed up there. They came down and performed with us. Um, it was a wonderful band to perform with. And I then got involved also with a smaller community band in upstate New York by word of mouth. Um, the Victor Pops band, which was smaller and sort of fit right in, and played with them. And by that time, it was time my wife's time to retire as a public school teacher.
Hmm.
And we knew that we wanted to live somewhere warmer than upstate New York. And we found a place here in Sun City Center, Florida. And we moved down here and found the South Shore Concert Band immediately, which happens to perform and rehearse right here in our town. And then we also found the Eastern Hillsborough Band by just finding them online and going to one of their concerts. And
Yeah.
that's how I found them. And at the time, they said, "Well, we're not an audition band, but we think our sections are full." But my wife played clarinet, and we said we could use your wife, but we'll tell you as a trumpet player when we might use you. I said, "Okay." And I told my wife, "You're in the band." And and a week later, I got a note saying, "Forget about what we just said. Come on in and join us." Now, the Eastern Hillsborough Band that Lee and I both play in is a great group of community people. Everything I've described, but it's about 80 people. We have
Mhm.
15 trumpet players. But the sound that our conductors get out of us, well balanced. It's a nice sound, and we have the honor of being invited to perform this coming June in Normandy, France, at the anniversary of D-Day. So we're all traveling to Europe and performing in France at the D-Day celebration in June of this year, which is exciting. Community bands
Yeah.
don't typically get invitations like this, so
Yeah, it is exciting. It's awesome.
we are thrilled. Lee and I and my wife and all of our friends that we've made in the band are all heading over to France, and can't wait to have for that to happen.
What's kind of neat because I just wanted to share this. It's I think the craze. I'm big in history. With the golden age of bands. Back in the early 1900s,
Mhm.
such being the Sousa band, the Arthur Pryor band, all those kind of groups, right?
Right.
And it's interesting. Their claim to fame was to really travel around. They would travel all over the place and perform. Now, of course, they'd be on the road quite a bit more. More of
Right.
like what we call like the modern day pop stars. Where they're going from town to town to town. But what's interesting to me is the fact that, the community bands now and, different other local organizations are starting to do that, which is
Yeah.
amazing, and
Yeah,
it's
it
cool.
is.
It's cool that they're doing that because I know, back in the day I was told by one of my participants that I had in a community band, he made a comment to me that he was in it because he loved to travel. Now that travel was only really within the state, but
Mhm.
we're talking back when transportation wasn't so easy as it is today, where you can easily go and get on something and go places pretty quickly. And he really loved that. So, I mean, that's the other side of it, where people can perform in bands and go different places. And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just it's just cool to hear how you're doing that with a community band, you know?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, that's how I found out about bands. If I think the thing is being proactive and just listening to other people, looking in places online for opportunities to play. Especially with the internet now, it's much easier to find than it was prior to the internet. But if you have an interest, you just try to find it out, and eventually something will cross your path, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said. And one thing I'd ask, like, what do you feel, and I know you shared it very much, which I appreciate how, you found these different groups and got into different groups, but what do you think the itch was? And I'm asking that question because, you made a comment that, well, I had to, I moved in Connecticut and then I played for a little bit and then you had children. I get that, responsibilities, family responsibilities, of course, they'll take precedence, but you got that itch again. You
Yeah.
went back in the band. And I'm just interested if you can share a little bit, about that. I call it the itch of wanting to be in a band again, to get those experiences, you
Yeah,
know.
I think you're right. It is an itch. It is an itch that does need to be scratched. Um, I I think in retrospect, going back to my what I'll consider very wonderful experiences growing up in the high school band, in the RPI bands, both the concert band and the pep band, and the opportunities we had to perform at different events, places. It
Yeah.
wasn't just football games and parades and hockey games. I mean, at RPI when we were freshmen, we were invited as the pep band to come over to a professional conference in Albany and perform a world premiere of the new theme song, believe it or not, the A&P supermarkets. And that was thrilling. You got a bunch of young college kids. We got on a bus. We go to Albany for an afternoon performance in front of a bunch of convention goers in a hotel conference room.
Yeah.
And we come in and we perform, and they were thrilled. And boy, it's just something that gives you more of that itch.
Hmm.
Um, One of my funniest stories was as I was going into my senior year of RPI. I was at RPI before the semester started, and I got a call from a trombone player in our band. It turns out he was in Navy ROTC, and the Navy has a tradition of greeting ships that come to port with a band on the dock. Well, there was a ship coming up the Hudson River to the port of Albany.
Wow.
And this is before school started, and he needed to put together a band. And the Navy had called him, and he's calling a bunch of us. Well, three of our friends and a few others. He outfitted us in Navy uniforms, and we went to Albany and we stood on the dock. And the idea was we're going to play a few Sousa marches and greet the ship in
Yeah.
Navy tradition, even though we were not ROTC. We did that. It was fun. We're on the dock, and all of a sudden, the captain of this ship invited us on board for dinner. And my trombone playing friend, who was in the Navy or our Navy ROTC, he had to tell us the protocol to salute the flag and salute the officer of the deck to come on board the ship. And it's just one of those life experiences with music that you're never going to have otherwise.
Yeah.
There were many, many of these things. So that itch to continue playing the trumpet, yes, I practice, I play at home, whatever. The fulfillment I get from performing music is with others, with challenging pieces of music, doing all sorts of things, whether it's community concert bands, Broadway show pit orchestras for community groups. I'm going to be doing an Easter service this year, which I did last year with a brass choir. It's just so much fun, and it's a challenge, and it's a great way to meet people and bring people joy. And that to me is what makes me want to scratch that itch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. I mean, just to think about that experience where, you're invited on a ship.
I
You know what
know,
I
in a Navy uniform that I really shouldn't have been wearing, but oh well.
mean? But it's just interesting, how powerful music can be,
Yeah.
and that kind of goes into my next segue, a question I wanted to ask for you. And there is absolutely, I say this all the time. I went into music. There's absolutely no, I tell this to everybody. You are as just a musician as everyone else who's working and, have continue playing and performing your instrument. I'm just interested, how that balance was. And I understand that, you're working. I understand that, and you're totally in a different field, and yet you have this passion for music. And whether you want to call it a hobby, and I'm going to say it's an awesome hobby, it's a pretty big staple to you, you know,
Mhm. Yeah.
or
Well,
what, but it's, I'm just interested, and again, not about your career choice. That's not what I'm asking about. I'm
no.
asking more of like, I think people don't realize that, you can go and do other things, and work at different places or do other things that have nothing to do with music and still perform music. And that's what I'm kind of, asking about because you're doing it. I mean, and I know you worked and you played and you had
Oh,
families and you played and you kept all those experiences going.
it was, there are times when it becomes challenging, when there are conflicts and you have to prioritize what's important in your life.
Mhm.
And the beauty about community bands in general, community concert bands, but even other musical groups that are community based, is that they allow you that latitude when your profession, when your family has things that are definitely more important, and you have to fulfill those needs when there are conflicts. I've been lucky to try to work the music in around all of those things without negatively impacting anything, I hope. There was one time on short notice, about 15, 20 years ago, when I was asked to be in a pit orchestra for a show, a community show in upstate New York, in Geneva, New York. And it was, I'm not sure if you're aware, know the show. It was called The Wild Party. And it's got a very challenging trumpet part and a great pit orchestra part. And I looked at it, looked at my schedule and said, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I was given the music. And then my profession said, we need you out in Wisconsin for the next couple of weeks. And that was going to be right during rehearsals, not performances.
Yeah.
And I said, I have to go. And it's one of the only times for a professional engagement where I actually took my trumpet with me, talked to the hotel that I was staying in, and said, I need to practice this part, and I'm playing the trumpet. Is there a room where I can play without bothering guests or anyone else? They gave me a conference room every night to go in and practice the pit music for the wild party. That's the one and only time I've ever done that, but I had to make my profession, um, do meet up with my professional obligations.
Yeah.
And yet I was able to learn the music. At the time, I thought I was going to be home. Well, now I'm on the road, but the hotel was very gracious and accommodating. I mean, probably could have found another place to play. I wasn't going to play in my room and bother the other guests.
Well, hey, as we're wrapping this up, let me ask you. I kind of ask all my guests this, basically. I kind of ask them, this side of it of at one time you weren't involved with the band, you had to step down for various reasons. I know you made a comment about your family reasons, and I get that. But you kept participating. But I always ask people what they would say as far as their advice, as far as what they would say to others who want to be in the band, want to perform in the band, or interested in starting an instrument. Maybe they haven't even played an instrument before. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Thing in
yeah,
that realm, coming into it, because I've seen a lot of that later in life. I know there's the New Horizons band. I don't know if you're familiar with them. I know,
I, I
that's a
am.
big movement, actually comes from Rochester, New York.
Ah, okay,
So,
didn't know
so I'm
that.
just interested what your advice are. Yeah, what your advice is a little bit about what you would tell folks, you know, um, either getting involved with community bands, or again, starting a community band, or being involved with a community band, or starting playing an instrument, or any of that, any of the above.
Yeah, I mean, I came from my passion, as I indicated, from my young days as a school child, and my parents encouraging it. And I look back on it and realized, yes, I put a lot of work into this. And I probably, if I wanted to have been a professional musician or a music educator, maybe I could have pursued that. I would have had to put more work in. But that doesn't mean that people later in life cannot start. And actually, I'm looking forward to maybe learning the piano on my own. My sister, who's been a piano player since she was a child, has always been an inspiration to me. And I have an electronic keyboard now at home, and maybe I can learn. The thing is, pick it up, see what you can learn. If I can bring any knowledge and experience to you that gets you over those beginner's humps where you can't make a good sound, or you don't know how to place your fingers, or move your fingers, let's get over that, and let's do it in a positive way. I'm not saying you have to go through all the hours and whatnot of practicing that I have been and others have always gone through, in order to be proficient enough to perform. I think anyone that has a desire and a love of music can probably pursue this. And if they find that it's not really what they thought it might be, well, then you move on to something else. I would always encourage anyone to pick up a musical instrument. Don't know many people that have picked up a wind instrument later in life, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. I think people can adapt themselves if they have a love for the music and want to learn how to perform it. Maybe they've had some experiences in the past, maybe they haven't. Everyone's focus and drive on this is going to be a little bit different. But pick it up. Maybe it'll be as much fun for you as it's been for me.
Well, thanks, Harvey. I appreciate that. You have a lot of great things to say here. I mean, I always say this. It's like it's never too late,
Yep.
whether you participated or haven't participated. And just like you said, it's just get involved. I mean, it's so amazing how, and I keep saying this, how people like yourself continue to get involved and continue to make music. And even though I wanted to share this with you, even though I know you don't call yourself a professional musician, you're sure doing a lot of things like a professional musician would do.
Thank
And I always use those terms of professional and amateur, kind of toss that away because it's all about music making. So I just want to say
Right.
thank you, for being on this podcast. You're such an inspiration, to be involved and be, care about the music world and care about the band world and care about, what composers are saying and care about, sharing music with others. That's what I feel is the most important thing. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Josh. It's been a wonderful conversation.